Howdy, hey gamers. Welcome to Furry Tutorial 101. I'm going to be showing you the basics of how to find shapes like these in reference materials and how to translate these into an actual drawing of your new furry OC to post on DeviantArt. So we're going to begin this by first analyzing a drawing of an actual wolf. So we're going to look at the drawing on the bottom here of a real life wolf. Oh my god, look at it, guys. It's a real animal. That's so cool. So we're going to look at this guy and we're going to try to break him down into basic shapes. So we know that whenever we start drawing a human, you might be familiar with the very tried and true method of looking at a piece of paper and going, okay, I want to draw a human. Okay, guess I'll put the eyes here, and the nose here, and the eyebrows and the mouth. Like, we're all very familiar with this method, right? We're going to take this method, which I like to call the planes of the face, and we're going to put this on an animal. It's going to work. Trust me, it's going to work. So, moving on to our wolf drawing here. Let's start with this bottom one here, because I feel like this one's a bit easier to translate to that human angle that we were just talking about. So I'm going to look at him, and I'm going to try to see if I can pick out an outline for his face. So, let's see. We have the top of the ears here, which is the easiest place to start. And we can kind of see that the ears look like they're on top of the head, so we're just going to kind of go around like this. We want to follow his cheek shape, and then kind of curve down around his mouth. So, that's like our funky little circle here. I guess it's like a kite shape. That's the best way I can describe it. And now we're going to try to find the eye line, which we usually do by connecting the eyes first, the corners of the eyes together, and then moving that to the edge. Holy shit, there's our eye line. Now for this one, usually with humans, we would find the eyebrow line next. But for this one, we're actually going to find the muzzle line next. The muzzle line can be done by taking the side of the jaw here and connecting that up to the forehead. It's going to be almost like a teardrop shape for most large canine animals like this. For cats, you're going to have a very smaller and condensed shape. So now what we're going to do is map out the nose, which is usually kind of at the bottom here. And then we're going to find the ears, which are just a rounded shape on top. And that's how we get from an image of an animal like this to some of this other referencing that I've done. So from these other references, we're going to pretend that you've taken that first example and you've ran with it and you have a page that looks kind of similar like this for your referencing. We're going to kind of analyze the shapes that we've outlined the most. So what do I notice these have in common? I see that we all have kind of like a very similar, like almost diamond shape, kite shape head here. Even on the ones that are on a side view, I can see that all of our muzzle lines all kind of get a little bit wider at the bottom here. Except for that side view there, where it seems like almost we get a little chunkier. See, that muzzle shape is pretty much the same. I can see that the ears here always connect from that muzzle line to the side of that kite. Those are pretty consistent. And so even in this one, I didn't finish the ears on this one. Oh, please, I'm a YouTuber, I promise. You can see that's pretty consistent as well. That one's pretty consistent. Overall, it seems like we're noticing some similarities with these. So once we get these basic shapes down, we're going to complicate it a little bit. Because I can draw a wolf with just these reference planes, right? But it's going to look kind of funky and a little bit ugly. And we got to make our furries hot. So now, I'm going to do something more akin to the examples in black here. I'm going to look at our images here. You can kind of see there's some outlining done already because this is someone else's reference image. I'm going to start trying to outline my kite on this fennec fox here. By my muzzle line, bring it down to the corner of the nose. Find my eye line, bring it around. Find my ear line, bring it down. This time, though, I'm going to map out my nose a little bit clearer. And I'm also going to map out the center of my ear because I need to know what direction his ears are facing. If your animal has any kind of like cheek fluff or cheek adornment, here's where you would add it. Usually the cheek fluff goes from the bottom of the ear here to the bottom of this kite, where the jugular is. This one doesn't have any, but I want to add some for flavor, so I'm going to add that in part of this step. Now we're going to connect the jaw lines here. Usually whenever I'm referencing an image, I like to also add where the actual mouth line of the animal ends. So in this case, it's about here. And then we're going to add the eye on top. So for this one, the difference between a reference like this one and this one is we've taken the basic planes of the face here and we've translated it into something that we can manipulate. So now I can see the center of the ears here, and I can move it to where his ears are maybe looking forward. Or I can open his mouth now, because I know how his jaw connects. I know where the contact points are for each shape, so I know how they move along with other shapes. This is really nice to do if you have a 3D model of the animal you're working with. I know that's not feasible for everyone. That's why we also have websites where you can angle the animal and it'll give you reference images. But if you take a 3D model, you can really rotate it and see kind of how those shapes connect to each other and how they manipulate in that space. We're really trying to capture the feeling of a 3-dimensional object that is trapped in a 2D plane. So that's why we have to focus on how these angles interact with each other. Like for this one, I want to have the open ears here because I need the viewer to understand how this entire piece connects right here. So how do you translate this into an actual drawing? I know this has been a bit of a strange video so far, but we're going to now connect these to a actual drawing plane. So we've got our paper ready. Now we're going to translate these. I want to begin by drawing a very, very simple front view. So for our reference images, that's going to be this one right here. We're going to just try to direct on this one. With a little bit of that other one that we did, the one here, we're going to be referencing both of those. So, from our drawings with our wolves, we've learned that wolves have a mostly kite-shaped face. This applies to most every animal. I think the difference between wolves and things like felines is that felines tend to have a face that's like kind of like eye-shaped, I guess. I don't know the best way to describe it other than like you can hold their face real good, like this. So their face shape would be more like this shape, while dogs and wolves are more of like this shape because they tend to have a lot more real estate for their large ass snouts. Oh god, I can't cuss. YouTube doesn't monetize me. Please. Please. Okay. So we're going to begin with this kite shape for our wolf. Kite shape, kite shape, kite shape. Now, we're going to draw our eye line. Do we want him looking up? Do we want him looking down? I'm going to go with a general down shape because it's following our reference. For his muzzle, we're going to start at the top here, and we're going to make a teardrop shape. Teardrop shape. For his ears, we know that it comes from the top here and connects down. Top, connects down. And this is all we need to begin drawing, but we're going to fully do our outline. Once you become more of like a experienced artist, you can just go from here. You don't even have to draw all these steps, but we're going to do the full thing. We're going to commit to it. So here, We know from our other drawing here that we did, this one, we know that our muzzle begins kind of in front of the teardrop shape. That looks inappropriate. We're not going to worry about it. And then comes down around here. We know that the middle of our ears tends to begin around here. And then our eyes tend to be about here. So this is the part where you can begin stylization. I like to go with the belief that if you have a specific style that you're going for, you can use reference images from real animals and also drawn animals that the place has already done. I tend to do a lot of my references off things like Five Nights at Freddy's, Disney, Beastars, Zootopia, things like that have done a lot of drawn animal studies and that know how to exaggerate their animals. But you always have to remember that stylization cannot occur until you understand what you're trying to stylize. So, because we've studied our real animals here, and we understand the basic shapes of that, we can now stylize our animal. So, I'm going to begin by kind of starting with his ears. I want to keep his ears a little bit more natural because the specific styles that I enjoy like keeping their ears a bit more natural looking and a bit more realistic. The best thing about working with an animal that has fur is if you made a mistake, no you didn't, you can just make it look a little fluffy. You can just make him look a little soft, a little huggable. And then all of a sudden, there you go. You can see that when I'm drawing this, I'm focusing a lot on how my individual strokes can mimic the look of fur. So like if I'm going in here, I can kind of like pile some strokes here, and bam, he's got fur now. I can kind of strokes here. He's got fur now. Obviously, if you're working digitally, you can just color. You can use a painterly technique. You don't even have to do this. The best thing about furry creatures like this is it's all about what you want to imply, and it's about what you want to do. There's no right or no wrong way to draw a furry character. If the 12-year-olds on DeviantArt can make furry art, we can too. You can have as many sparkle dogs as you want as a treat. So we draw on our little ears. Now, I want my guy to look a little dopey, look a little silly even. So I'm going to keep this giant ass nose. I really, really think that he would look cute with his big ol' nose. So I'm going to draw him with this big ass nose. I think he would look adorable. So there we go. Give him a big ass nose. I like to draw a little line here separating the top and the bottom of the nose because if you look at actual animals, they tend to have a little line here that separates that. And you also tend to have a lighter coloring on top of here anyway. I think it looks nice. For long areas like this that tend to be very blank, I know a lot of artists will whine about negative space. Just add some line as like a little stylization. You know, I just do a little JoJo moment. Give him some lines. I think it looks cute. I think it looks fine. Doesn't look too empty. For his actual eyes, you can go with a classic dot eye. You can give him anime eyes. It really doesn't matter. Because this is an anthropomorphized animal, you can go whatever style you want. So if I want to give him a little wolf eye, I'm going to kind of go up from here and kind of connect from the bottom. But you also want to keep in mind that because this is an anthro, you don't want to make him look like just a regular old wolf guy. So you want to still give him some humanoid bits in his eyes. So I'm going to make his eye a little bit bigger than it usually should be. Because I want people to know that, like, he's cute. He could be in a Disney movie. him and Judy Hopps against the world, you know? So now I'm going to continue that kite shape around the rest of his face. Bam. This is as simple as you possibly can go for a wolf. I don't I should have hopefully hyper detailed the ears are compared to everything else. It's fine, guys. It's fine. It's fine. We're gonna give him some more shapes here. Make him look real cute. Also, a good tip for wolves and dogs is they have like little implied eyebrows. They don't have real eyebrows unless you want them to. But their little implied eyebrows kind of just go from the corner of their eye and then just like around like this. Which makes it like really easy to have them like emote and express stuff. Because suddenly you have a pair of eyebrows right here that you can move like a human would move their eyebrows. So it becomes really easy to give them expressions. So we're going to take this basic idea and we're going to make another one. Starting out with that kite shape. Here we go. We have our eye line. We have our teardrop shape. Let's get this more centered. I'm such a good YouTuber. Like and subscribe, guys. We have our teardrop shape. We have our ears. Except this time, let's really focus on how we're moving these shapes within our space. So instead of just doing his ears like they were before, let's make him sad. Let's move his ears down. So whenever we start translating this now, we're going to make him look a little sad. So we're going to start with this fur up here. And whenever you're drawing an animal with their ears down, their cheeks tend to go over their ears. So we're going to actually start by drawing the little cheek fluffs first. Because you'll notice that animals don't just put their ears back, they pin them down to their little heads. So now we're going to be using really, really obvious shape language to kind of show like, oh, his ears are down, he's a little sad. Oh. We're going to be drawing the nose, kind of big and around. Draw his big old nose. Draw his cheeks down. Except this time, we're going to give him little dot eyes. Oh, there you go. He looks like that one guy from Beastars. Guys, it's Lego. Just kidding. It's really awful joke. And this is just referencing. This is how you draw furries. You just take an image. You trace over the basic shapes that you could find in that image. So around the head shape, along the eye line, along the perceived snout line or the defining feature of their face, where their ear placement is, and you just study this and then try to translate it to the angle that you want. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. We cannot draw like a camera. It's okay. But like, what if you have an animal that you can't reference super easily? What if you have an animal that either doesn't exist, or it's really hard to find a photo, or you just like don't know where to start. You don't know where to begin. Well, those animals, usually things like dragons, made up species like protogens or wicker beast, you want to try to find the best reference at your material, which are fursuit head bases. So a fursuit head base, as we've kind of heard slightly, are the bones of a fursuit, or the skull of the fursuit. It is a foam base, or a plastic base, that is meant to have fur be put on it. So, in this case, we're going to try to draw a dragon. But like, oh no, we can't go outside and photograph a real dragon, they don't exist. I'm pulling up images now of a fursuit head base, which are examples like this. But also, media is your best friend. So I've also pulled up images from things like Game of Thrones or D&D. You can kind of see I've started experimenting with our method already because I wanted to make sure that I was teaching a method that worked. Because it's so important to me that you are able to replicate these methods. So I've said before that dragons are cheese. Okay, stick with me. Dragons are cheese. Their heads are cheese wedges. And what I mean by that is that they tend to have a snout that comes to a point or something similar to a point. And their face tends to get wider as it goes back, much like a cheese wedge would. So, beginning with this image down here, obviously his mouth is open. That's going to change a little bit. But we can kind of have our end of the cheese wedge here, and we can kind of move it back. Now you're probably thinking, how do I know when his skull ends? He's got all those horns. A good thing to note is that with dragons, we tend to have horns that go in a pattern, or they tend to follow a specific shape. So we can see here that both of sets of his horns kind of follow a pattern like this, meaning the end of that skull is going to be where those points meet up. So we can kind of see horns, horn, 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 horn. Sorry. So this is kind of where his cheese wedge is. In the eye line of this dragon's what we're going to be tracking next. We can kind of see his eyeballs right here. Dragon eye lines, their eyes tend to be behind about the halfway point because the eye line tends to be a little bit behind that halfway point. So if our halfway point's about here, there's his eye line, there's the back of his skull. So you really could just draw like a rectangle if you're drawing a side dragon, divide it in half, there's your eye line, there's the back of your head, there's your nose. That's like advanced, so we'll get there later. You know? So like this Game of Thrones dragons I've already done, you can kind of see I've measured out his snout here, I've cheese wedged him, I found the midpoint of all his horns, drawn his skull accordingly, found his eye line, drawn his nostrils. Same thing with this D&D one, cheese wedge, found the midpoint of the horns, eye line, nose. Front-facing dragons are a little bit harder because the cheese wedge thing holds up a little bit. But if you're referencing head bases, typically they're going to change the structure of the muzzle to fit where you can still see out of them. But this also is good because if you're anthropomorphizing a dragon, this takes from human features. So, for example, with here, we can kind of see these are our big ol' eyes. This is the end of our cheese wedge. We can kind of see where it comes back, cheese wedge, cheese wedge, cheese wedge, cheese wedge. And this is going to be a little bit easier for us to anthropomorphize because we already have features set in a very human-like way. But for dragons like this, a little bit harder. So, we're going to cheese wedge this dragon now. All dragons are made out of cheese. Cheese wedge. Cheese wedge. Cheese wedge. Cheese wedge. Cheese wedge. Cheese wedge. Wow. Another dragon cheesed. So, like, how do we do this in an actual drawing? We cheese wedge him. Same thing we did as the wolf drawing. We're so good at this, guys. I pinky promise we're great at this. And if I'm going a little too fast, I'm so sorry. I've had, like, the idea for this tutorial in my head forever. And I've, like, known what I'm doing. And also, this is meant to be just kind of like a crash course. So that if anyone has deeper questions, they can just ask them and I'll answer. Not a big problem. So let's cheese wedge our dragon now, okay? So we're going to begin with our cheese wedge. I'm just going to draw a nice chunk of cheese right here. Nice chunk of cheese. If you don't know how to draw a cheese wedge, by the way, sorry, that's what this tutorial's riding on. I had no commentary for that. Hope you learn. So we got our cheese wedge. So we're going to find the halfway point, which is about here. So we know that our eye line is slightly behind that halfway point. Here's our eye line. Our eye is probably right about here. We know our nostrils towards the end. There we go. And the good part about this is that because we already have the back of the head, we know where to draw the horns, baby. So if we want to give our guy like funky little horns, there you go. We know where to put them. We're so good at this. We give him funky little horns. The only problem is trying to make the horns match. Aha. Look, there we go. Now, we just take our pen and we cheese wedge him. So we have his eye here. We're going to give him a big ol' anime girl eye. Because that'll really humanize him. Trust. 15 million sparkles. So that's our little eye. I like to do the nostril first. A good thing with dragons and with drawing reptiles in general for furry tutorials. And sorry, that was a mess of a sentence. Oh, I'm gonna restart. The best thing about drawing dragons is that with furries we imply fur. With dragons and lizards we imply scales. And we do this by not individually drawing each scale, but I like to do these little cheat spots. So this implies that, like, yeah, it's a scale texture, guys. Look, promise. You don't actually have to draw them. We also are a big fan of ridges. So, for example, the nose here, I'm going to give that a little ridge. Because I know that that dragon is he's a little scaly. He's going to have some ridges on him. Do the same thing with your eyebrows. Give him some ridges. With their mouth, same thing. Give him some ridges. Also, the back of the jaw for dragons usually either happens at the back of the face here or right near the eye. It depends on how long your dragon's snout is and how long you want him to open his jaw. Give him more scale texture. Here, I draw the ridge for the other one. For horns, I like to do an implied base. Usually, I don't like doing the full round because I think that looks a little stupid. I like just going here and adding some lines to imply, like, the base of a horn. And then we're going up with our horn, not making it look super perfect. Bring it up. Adding some more texture. And if it's not perfect, it's fine. We're just learning. The same thing with these ones. I don't like to actually draw a base form. I like to imply one. Give him some scale to finish off. There we go. We've just gone from a creature that doesn't exist to cheese wedging into a dragon. And this method is fantastic. I love using the cheese wedge method for dragons. I think it works really, really well. You can do the same thing with other creatures. Like, if I'm drawing a cat, for example, they have, like, that eye shape kind of thing for their snouts. So, this is just off the dome. I know that cats have this kind of, like, cheese shape, or... I'm thinking about cheeses. I'm thinking about cheese. They have this eye shape, and I know that their snout makes it look like a big ol' eyeball. I know their ears come up like that. I know that this is their snout line. I know that this is their eye line. And I know this because of all the referencing I've done. So I can just whip out a cat like this. You know? So I can just whip out an warrior cat OC. Super easy. Now, also another point to understand is, like, you can stylize a little bit more to like ignore the anatomy if you want to. Like, if I wanted to make this cat look more or less humanoid, or look more like a wolf or less like, it's fine. I can just go a little crazy with it. You know. There is no police force. They're not going to come to your house and get you if you draw it wrong. It's okay. The only critic you have to worry about is you. So there we go. Haha, JK, this is fan art. Someone's OC. Look, wow, fantastic. I understand the basics, so I can draw a cat. Obviously, this is going to be very messy. We're sketching. If I want to refine this and make this a whole ass cool drawing, I can do that. Because I understand how to reference now. I understand how to draw shapes. Anyway. I got a little excited there. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. Because I feel like this is a really good place. We understand what we're doing. We understand how to do it. Next video, we're going to be talking about the difference in leg shapes and how we anthropomorphize a body for these guys. So I'm going to likely begin with a head and we're going to create a body from there. We're going to be talking about the 3 main leg styles that we find in anthro animals. We're going to be talking about paws, about hands, which one we want to use, and just generally discussing how to draw furry bodies for our beautiful furry heads that we've done today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Comment down below if you have any questions about how to break in specific animals into shapes, and I can make additional follow-up videos. Not a problem. That's all for me, gamers. Bye-bye.